Never tell people what you do. Tell them what you've done. In a world where everyone is talking, announcing, and posting their next big move, silence has become a superpower. The moment you tell people what you plan to do, you give away energy, focus, and sometimes even the dream itself. Words feel like progress, but most of the time they are just noise. But when you tell people your plans too early, opinions start pouring in. Some will doubt you. Some will discourage you. Some will secretly hope you fail. And even the well-meaning ones can plant fear without realizing it. Suddenly, what was once a clear vision becomes heavy, complicated, and uncertain. There is also a dangerous illusion in talking. Your brain rewards you for saying something as if you've already done it. You feel productive without putting in the work. You feel successful without earning the results. And slowly, motivation fades because the applause came too early. Real power moves in silence. Real growth happens quietly. The strongest people don't explain their next step. They execute it. They let discipline replace discussion. They let results speak louder than announcements. Silence protects your focus. It keeps your vision clean. It allows you to fail, adjust, learn, and rise again without an audience judging every step. Not everyone deserves access to your journey. Not everyone needs to know your strategy. When you finally arrive, you won't need to explain anything. Your results will introduce you. Your consistency will answer every question, and your success will be undeniable. So work quietly, build patiently, move strategically. And remember, never tell people what you do. Let them see it. Talking too early kills momentum because the moment you speak about your plan, something subtle but dangerous happens inside your mind. Your brain starts confusing intention with action. Simply saying, I'm going to do this, gives you a small hit of satisfaction, almost like you've already taken a step forward. That satisfaction is fake progress. It feels good, but it doesn't move you anywhere. Over time, that false reward weakens the inner pressure that pushes you to actually do the work. You start feeling busy, excited, and productive without producing anything real. When plans are shared too early, they become fragile. They are still raw, untested, and vulnerable. At this stage, they need silence, focus, and repetition, not exposure. The more people you tell, the more directions your mind gets pulled into. Every reaction you receive, whether positive or negative, starts shaping your thinking. Even praise can be harmful. Compliments can make you relax too soon, convincing you that you're already on the right path before you've proven anything to yourself. Another problem with early talk is accountability pressure. Once people know what you plan to do, you feel watched. Instead of working freely, you start performing for expectations. Fear of failure increases because now it's no longer just your private struggle, it's a public promise. This pressure can either rush you into sloppy action or paralyze you completely, Lee. Many people quit not because the goal was too hard, but because they announced it too early and couldn't handle the weight of other people's expectations. Talking also opens the door to doubt. Even one careless comment can plant uncertainty. Someone might question your ability, your timing, your resources, or your intelligence. You may have been confident before, but now that doubt lives rent-free in your head, you start overthinking instead of executing. You start seeking validation instead of building skill. Momentum dies when confidence is replaced by hesitation. There's also a loss of urgency. When plans stay private, there's an internal fire pushing you forward. You know what you want and no one else is involved. Once you talk about it, that urgency fades. You feel like you've already moved closer to the finish line just by explaining your intentions. Days pass, then weeks, and the fire slowly turns into comfort. Comfort is the enemy of momentum. Early talk also creates emotional attachment to the idea rather than commitment to the process. You fall in love with the image of success instead of the grind required to reach it. You imagine the outcome, the recognition, the respect, but imagination alone does not build discipline. No, momentum is built by repetition, discomfort, and consistency, not by conversations. See, not by conversation. Silence, on the other hand, forces action. When no one knows what you're doing, the only way to feel progress is to actually make progress. You can't rely on words to feel productive. You have to show up, put in effort, and move forward step by step. That's how real momentum is born. Quietly, slowly, and honestly. The strongest momentum comes from private commitment. When a goal lies only in your mind and heart, it grows stronger through action, not approval. You don't need to explain delays. You don't need to defend mistakes. You don't need to justify your pace. You just work. And with every silent step forward, momentum compounds, becoming harder to stop and easier to maintain. Talking too early doesn't just slow momentum, it often kills it before it ever has a chance to live. Opinions dilute focus because the moment you invite other people into your plans, your mind stops being a single, clear voice and turns into a crowded room. What was once a simple direction becomes layered with suggestions, warnings, ads, and comparison. Comparison. Even when people mean well, their perspectives are shaped by their own fears, limitations, and experiences, not by your potential. When you absorb too many outside views, your original clarity starts to fade and focus becomes fragmented. Every opinion carries emotional weight. A supportive comment can raise expectations you're not ready to meet, while a negative one can linger far longer than it should. One careless remark can replay in your head during moments of weakness, distracting you when you should be executing. Focus thrives on certainty and simplicity, but opinions introduce complexity. Instead of concentrating on the next actionable step, you start juggling mental noise. Another danger is that opinions often push you towards safe, familiar paths. People advise based on what feels comfortable to them, not on what is necessary for growth. When boldness is required or patience when urgency is needed. Over time, this can subtly shift your behavior. You begin making decisions that please others or reduce criticism instead of decisions that move you closer to your goal. Focus is no longer aligned with purpose. It becomes aligned with approval. Opinions also encourage comparison. Someone will mention another person who tried something similar and failed, or someone who succeeded faster, or someone who chose a different route. Comparison steals attention. Sighten. Instead of tracking your own progress, you start measuring yourself against stories that have nothing to do with your circumstances. Focus slips away as your mind constantly recalibrates based on external references rather than internal direction. Direction. When too many voices are involved, decision-making slows down. You hesitate, second-guess, and overanalyze. Focus requires decisiveness, but opinions create forks in the road at every step. You keep asking yourself which advice to follow, which warning to take seriously, which suggestion to ignore. This mental back and forth drains energy that should be spent on execution. Momentum weakens as focus gets stuck in analysis. There is also a hidden loss of confidence. Constant exposure to opinions trains you to seek reassurance before acting. You start checking with others instead of trusting your judgment. Over time, this dependence erodes self-belief. Focus shifts from what needs to be done now to what will people think if I do this. That shift is subtle, but it is powerful enough to derail progress. Even positive opinions can be distracting. Praise can lock you into a version of yourself that others expect you to be. You may avoid necessary changes because you don't want to disappoint those who supported your initial idea. Focus then becomes about maintaining an image rather than improving results. Growth slows because attention is split between execution and perception. Focus is strongest when it is protected. And when you limit access to your plans, your mind stays clean. Decisions become faster. Actions become clearer. Energy is directed toward effort, not explanation. Without external opinions constantly pulling at your attention, you can fully immerse yourself in the process, adapt when needed, and stay aligned with your vision. Opinions don't just distract, they dilute, they water down intensity, clarity, and commitment. And when focus is diluted, even the best ideas lose their power to turn into reality. Silence protects your energy because energy is limited, and every conversation about your plans spends a portion of it. When you talk too much about what you're trying to build, you are constantly explaining, defending, justifying, and sometimes even arguing. Each of these exchanges drains mental and emotional fuel that could have been used for progress. Silence acts like a shield, preserving that fuel so it can be invested where it truly matters. Action. When plans are spoken out loud, they invite reactions, and reactions demand emotional responses. You feel the need to respond to encouragement, to counter doubt, to correct misunderstandings, or to reassure others. Even neutral reactions still take space in your mind. You replay conversations, analyze tones, and think about what you should have said differently. All of that mental activity consumes energy without moving you forward. Silence eliminates this drain by keeping your inner world undisturbed. Another way silence protects energy is by reducing emotional exposure. When people know what you're working on, your emotions become tied to their responses. A negative comment can frustrate you. A skeptical look can irritate you. These emotional spikes and drops exhaust you over time. Silence keeps your emotional states. It allows you to stay grounded, focused, and consistent rather than constantly reacting to external input. Silence also protects energy by removing the need for validation. When no one knows your plans, you're not waiting for approval, praise, or reassurance. You act because you decided to act, not because someone clapped for the idea. This self-driven movement is far more sustainable. Seeking validation is exhausting because it never fully satisfies. There is always another opinion to chase. Silence breaks that cycle and keeps your energy self-contained. There is a difference between internal motivation and external stimulation. External stimulation, likes, comments, encouragement, gives quick bursts of excitement, followed by crashes. Internal motivation builds slowly but lasts longer. It was longer. Strengthens internal motivation by forcing you to rely on your own discipline and commitment. Instead of burning energy on excitement, you conserve it for endurance. That endurance is what carries you through boring, difficult, and repetitive work. When you move in silence, you also avoid unnecessary conflict. Not everyone will agree with your choices, and disagreements cost energy. Defending your decisions, explaining your reasons, or trying to change someone's mind pulls you into battles that don't help your progress. Silence removes the battlefield altogether. You don't have to convince anyone of anything. You simply move. Silence creates mental clarity, and clarity saves energy. When your mind isn't cluttered with external opinions, reactions, and expectations, tasks feel lighter. You know what to do, and you do it. Confusion, on the other hand, is exhausting. It forces your brain to constantly switch contexts, reconsider choices, and question direction. In silence minimizes this confusion and allows energy to flow smoothly toward execution. There is also an energetic advantage in privacy during struggle. Every meaningful goal comes with moments of doubt, fatigue, and frustration. When these moments are private, you can process them honestly without the added pressure of explaining yourself. You don't have to pretend to be strong or confident for an audience. You can rest, reset, and return with renewed energy. Public struggle often forces performance, which is far more draining than quiet recovery. Silence protects energy by keeping your attention inward rather than outward. Instead of monitoring reactions, expectations, and perceptions, you monitor effort, progress, and improvement. This inward focus is efficient. Energy isn't wasted on things you can't control. It is invested in actions you can repeat daily. Energy grows when it is guarded. Silence is not weakness or secrecy. It is strategic. By choosing not to speak, you choose to save strength, maintain balance, and direct your power where it produces results. Not everyone wants you to win. And understanding this is not about becoming paranoid or bitter, but about becoming aware. When you start working towards something meaningful, you assume that people around you will naturally support you. You believe encouragement is automatic and goodwill is guaranteed. In reality, many people react to your ambition through the lens of their own insecurities, disappointments, and unrealized dreams. Your growth becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what it reflects. Some people don't want you to win because your progress highlights their stagnation. unexpected. Your effort reminds them of chances they didn't take, risks they avoided, or discipline they failed to maintain. Even if they never say it openly, your ambition can make them uncomfortable. Instead of confronting that discomfort, they may project it onto you through sarcasm, doubt, or subtle discouragement. It's not always intentional, but it is real. There are also people who are comfortable with you only as long as you remain predictable. And then your success threatens the balance of how they see you and how they see themselves. When you start aiming higher, you disrupt that balance. Suddenly they question their position in your life. Will you outgrow them? Will the dynamic change? To protect their comfort, they may try to keep you small, advising you to slow down, be realistic, or not aim too high. Jealousy doesn't always look like hatred. Sometimes it looks like concern. It sounds like, I'm just worried about you, or I don't want you to get hurt, or are you sure this is a good idea? These statements may come wrapped in care, but they often carry fear rather than faith. Fear that you might succeed where they didn't. Fear that you might leave them behind. Not behind. Fear that your win will expose their excuses. Another hard truth is that some people enjoy access more than they enjoy your success. They like being close to your plans, your ideas, and your energy, but they don't necessarily want to see you rise above them. They want to be part of the conversation, not witnesses to the outcome. When your goals start becoming real, their enthusiasm fades. Support disappears when execution begins. There are also people who secretly benefit from your doubt. When you hesitate, when you struggle, when you stay stuck, it reassures them. It confirms their belief that trying is pointless or that success is rare. Your failure makes their comfort feel justified. Your win would challenge that comfort, so subconsciously, they resist it. Even well-meaning people can hold you back. They might love you deeply, but love doesn't automatically equal belief. They may encourage safety over growth, ability over risk, and familiarity over potential. They might push you toward what feels secure to them, not what feels right to you. Not what feels right. Their intentions are pure, but the impact can still be limiting. This is why sharing plans openly can be dangerous. Once people know what you're working toward, you expose your goal to all these hidden dynamics. You invite opinions shaped by envy, fear, comfort, and insecurity. They envy, fear, tease. Each comment may seem small, but together they form resistance. Resistance slows you down, drains your confidence, and forces you to carry emotional weight that isn't yours. When you move quietly, you remove yourself from this psychological battlefield. You don't give others the chance to doubt you out loud or discourage you subtly. You don't allow their unresolved emotions to interfere with your progress. Silence keeps your vision clean and your motivation self-directed. It's important to understand that not everyone who doubts you is your enemy, and not everyone who supports you is your ally. But until results exist, intentions are invisible. Protecting your plans is not about mistrust. It's about timing. Not enough time. You don't need permission to grow, and you don't need consensus to succeed. Winning often changes relationships, and people sense that before you do. Some will prepare to celebrate you. Others will prepare to resist you. Knowing this truth allows you to move with awareness instead of innocence, strategy instead of exposure, and strength instead of explanation. Discipline works better than discussion because progress is built through repeated action, not repeated explanation. Every time you discuss what you are going to do, you are investing time and mental energy into words instead of work. Discussion feels productive because it creates movement in conversation, but it rarely creates movement in reality. Discipline, on the other hand, is quiet, uncomfortable, and often boring, but it produces measurable results over time. Discussion invites delay. When you talk about your plans, you naturally start refining them verbally. You explain, adjust, rephrase, and rethink. This cycle can go on endlessly. You convince yourself that you're still working on it, when in truth, you're postponing execution. Discipline doesn't wait for perfect wording or perfect timing. It demands action now, even when clarity feels incomplete. That insistence on action is what separates intention from achievement. Another problem with discussion is that it turns effort into performance. You start focusing on how your plans sound rather than how they function. You want your ideas to appear smart, impressive, or ambitious to others. Discipline doesn't care how things sound. It cares how things work. It strips away ego and replaces it with routine. You don't need to impress anyone when you are disciplined. You only need to show up and do the work. Discussion also creates dependency. When you talk too much about your goals, you start relying on feedback, reactions, and reassurance. You wait to see how people respond before fully committing. Discipline removes that dependency. It doesn't ask for approval. It doesn't pause for opinions. It operates on commitment, not consensus. Once discipline is in place, external reactions lose their power over your behavior. There is also a false sense of control that comes from talking. When you discuss plans, you feel organized and prepared. But control without execution is an illusion. The discipline creates real control because it builds systems, habits, and routines. These systems function regardless of mood, motivation, or outside validation. While discussion changes with emotion, discipline remains consistent. Talking can also drain willpower. Each explanation, debate, or defense of your plan uses mental energy. Over time, that energy depletion makes it harder to act. Discipline conserves willpower by removing choice from the equation. You don't decide every day whether to act. You've already decided. The action becomes automatic, reducing mental resistance and preserving focus. Discipline thrives in repetition, while discussion thrives in novelty. Conversations change, evolve, and move on. Discipline stays on the same task day after day. That repetition may seem unexciting, but it is exactly what produces mastery. Skills are sharpened through consistent practice, not through varied conversations. Asians, results come from doing the same right thing many times, not from talking about many different things once. Another danger of discussion is that it exposes unfinished work. When something is still fragile, it needs protection, not exposure. Discipline allows ideas to mature privately. You experiment, fail, adjust, and improve without commentary. By the time others see the result, the work is solid. Discussion often forces premature visibility, which can interrupt this natural development. Discipline also builds self-respect. Every time you follow through without announcing it, you strengthen trust in yourself. You become someone who acts, not someone who explains. Discussion may earn temporary attention, but discipline earns long-term confidence. That internal confidence is far more powerful than any external praise. When discipline replaces discussion, time is used differently. Hours once spent explaining plans are redirected toward execution. Energy once spent convincing others is invested in improving skill. Focus once scattered across conversations becomes concentrated on progress. This shift is subtle but transformative. Discipline doesn't argue, it doesn't negotiate, it doesn't seek validation, it simply shows up, does the work, and repeats the process. And while discussion fades the moment the conversation ends, discipline leaves behind evidence, progress that continues to exist long after the words are forgotten. Privacy allows room to fail and improve because failure is an essential part of growth, and failure is hardest to handle when it happens in public. When people know what you are trying to do, every mistake feels heavier than it should. You're not just dealing with the problem itself. You're also dealing with embarrassment, explanations, and the fear of being judged. That extra weight can make small setbacks feel overwhelming and discourage you from continuing. When failure is private, it becomes information instead of humiliation. You can look at what went wrong objectively without attaching your self-worth to other people's reactions. You are free to analyze mistakes honestly rather than defensively. In private, you don't need to protect an image or maintain confidence for an audience. You can admit confusion, weakness, or lack of skill without shame, which makes learning faster and more effective. Public failure often forces people into denial. When others are watching, when natural instinct is to justify mistakes, make excuses, or shift blame, this prevents real improvement. Privacy removes that pressure. You can take full responsibility for errors without worrying about how it looks. Ownership is easier when no one is keeping score, and ownership is what turns failure into progress. Improvement requires experimentation, and experimentation requires freedom. You need space to try things that might not work, approaches that feel awkward, and methods that may look foolish at first. When others are aware of your process, you're more likely to play it safe to avoid criticism. Privacy encourages bold testing because there is no audience to impress. You can explore possibilities without fear of looking incompetent. Failure is rarely clean or linear. Progress usually looks messy, uneven, and confusing before it looks impressive. When people see only fragments of this mess, they often misunderstand it. Their misunderstandings can discourage you or push you to change course too early. Privacy allows the mess to exist without interference. You can stay patient through confusion instead of reacting to outside pressure. There is also emotional recovery to consider. Failure drains confidence, even when you expect it. When that loss of confidence happens publicly, recovery takes longer. You feel exposed and vulnerable. In private, recovery is quieter and faster. You can process disappointment without performing resilience. You can rest, reflect, and rebuild belief at your own pace. Improvement demands repetition, and repetition includes repeated failure. Many skills require you to get things wrong hundreds of times before you get them right. If every mistake is witnessed, each attempt carries anxiety. Anxiety slows learning. Privacy removes that anxiety and allows you to focus on the process rather than perception. You try again sooner because you're not afraid of judgment. Privacy also gives you the freedom to change direction. Sometimes improvement means realizing that the original plan was wrong. Public commitments make pivoting harder because changing direction can look like quitting. Quitting. In private, adaptation feels natural. You can abandon ineffective strategies without explaining yourself. This flexibility is crucial for growth because rigid plans rarely survive real-world testing. Failure is also deeply personal. The reasons behind it are often internal. Habits, discipline, mindset, fear. These are sensitive areas that require honesty. That honesty is difficult to access when you feel observed. Privacy creates a safe environment for self-examination. You can confront uncomfortable truths without the distraction of external judgment. When improvement happens privately, progress becomes real before it becomes visible. By the time others see results, the failures that shaped them are already resolved. This creates a sense of strength and stability that public trial and error rarely achieves. You appear confident not because you never failed, but because you failed quietly and learned thoroughly. Thoroughly. Privacy doesn't eliminate failure. It transforms it. It turns mistakes into lessons instead of labels. It allows growth to happen at its natural pace, free from comparison, commentary, and within that protected space, improvement becomes deeper, faster, and more sustainable. Results speak louder than words because words are easy to produce, but results are expensive. Anyone can talk about ambition, vision, and intention, but very few are willing to pay the price required to turn those ideas into something real. When you rely on words, you ask people to believe you. When you rely on results, belief is no longer necessary. Evidence replaces explanation. Words live in the future. They describe what might happen, what could be done, what is planned. This difference matters because the world responds to proof, not promises. No matter how convincing or passionate someone sounds, words alone do not create respect. Respect is earned when effort turns into outcomes that can be seen, measured, or experienced. Talking creates expectations, but results eliminate debate. When you speak about your goals, people feel free to question you, doubt you, advise you, or challenge your thinking. The conversation stays open because nothing has been finalized. Results. Then close the conversation. Once something is done, opinions lose power. People may still judge, but they can no longer deny what exists. Achievement shifts the dynamic from discussion to acknowledgement. Words also lose value through repetition. The more you talk about what you're going to do, the less impact your words carry. Over time, people stop listening, not because they don't care, but because they've learned that talk does not always lead to action. Results rebuild credibility instantly. Even a small outcome carries more weight than 1,000 explanations. One visible step forward says more than hours of conversation. Another truth is that words require interpretation, while results are self-explanatory. People hear words through their own biases, assumptions, and experiences. What you mean is not always what they understand. Results remove that confusion. They don't need translation. They communicate clearly across backgrounds, beliefs, and opinions. What exists is understood without argument. Results will protect you from being misunderstood. Flight Inc., you're from being misunderstood. When you rely on words, you are constantly clarifying, correcting, and restating your intentions. Misinterpretations drain energy and create frustration. Results speak for themselves. They don't need context or defense. They stand alone, reducing the need for explanation and preserving focus. Focus. There is also an internal impact. Producing results builds self-trust. Every completed action reinforces the belief that you can rely on yourself. Words do not create that same effect. You can talk all day and still doubt yourself at night. Results quiet that doubt. They provide internal evidence that effort leads somewhere. This internal confidence is stronger and more stable than confidence built on encouragement or praise. Results change how people treat you. When you talk, you are often seen as someone with potential. When you produce results, you are seen as someone with credibility. Potential invites advice and supervision. Credibility invites respect and space. People stop trying to manage your choices once you've shown that you can deliver. This shift is subtle, but powerful. Another reason results matter more than words is that they reveal discipline. Anyone can speak during moments of motivation. Results show what happens when motivation fades. They reflect consistency, endurance, and follow through. These qualities are rare, and rarity commands attention. People are drawn to outcomes because outcomes represent sustained effort over time, not momentary excitement. Words can also be forgotten. Conversations fade. Promises blur, and intentions are replaced by new intentions. Results remain. They leave traces. They create momentum that continues to work even when you are silent. A completed task, a built skill, or a finished project keeps speaking long after you stop talking. Results will free you from needing validation. When you have evidence of progress, you don't need reassurance. Reassurance. You know where you stand. Words often seek response, approval, encouragement, agreement. Results do not seek anything. They exist independently of reaction. This independence strengthens emotional stability and reduces reliance on others. When you let results speak, timing works in your favor. You are no longer rushing to be understood. You allow time and effort to mature your work. By the time you reveal anything, it carries substance. People listen differently when something is finished or proven. The same idea that once sounded unrealistic suddenly sounds impressive once it exists. Results also expose truth. They reveal what you actually prioritize, not what you claim to prioritize. They show where time, energy, and discipline were truly invested. This honesty can be uncomfortable, but it is also clarifying. It removes self-deception and replaces it with reality. Growth accelerates when reality is faced directly. Words ask for patience. Results reward patience. The quiet period of work, when nothing is announced and nothing is praised, builds something solid beneath the surface. When results finally appear, they carry the weight of that silence. They arrive not as a request for attention, but as proof of commitment. In the end, words are temporary signals, but results are permanent statements. Words describe intention. Results confirm identity. What you do consistently becomes louder than anything you could ever say. Power moves are made quietly because true power does not need witnesses while it is being built. Loud moves seek attention, approval, and recognition before substance exists. Quiet moves focus on positioning, preparation, and execution. When you move silently, you are not distracted by how things look. You are focused on how things work. This difference separates people who chase appearance from those who build influence. Quiet power is strategic. When others know your next step, they can anticipate it, comment on it, interfere with it, or mentally prepare themselves against it. Silence removes that advantage. You move without resistance because no one sees you coming. By the time others notice, the move has already been made and the outcome is already in motion. This element of surprise is not about deception. It is about efficiency. Loud actions often come from insecurity. They announce themselves because they need reassurance. Quiet actions come from confidence. They don't require applause to continue. When you trust your direction, you don't need to broadcast it. You understand that real strength grows best away from noise, where focus is uninterrupted and effort is undivided. And effort is undivided. Power also grows in patience, thrives in silence. Quiet movers are willing to wait, prepare, and compound small advantages over time. They understand that rushing visibility can expose weaknesses before they are resolved. Silence allows refinement. It gives you time to sharpen skills, build systems, and correct flaws without external pressure forcing premature results. When moves are made loudly, ego becomes involved. Ego wants credit now, recognition now, and validation now. Quiet power sidelines ego. It replaces it with calculation and discipline. Decisions are made based on long-term impact rather than short-term praise. This detachment allows clearer thinking and better judgment, which are essential elements of real power. Another reason power moves quietly is to avoid unnecessary resistance. Every public move invites opposition. People challenge what they can see. They compete with what they can measure. Silence keeps your progress invisible until it is too established to be easily challenged. By the time resistance forms, you are already ahead. Quiet power also protects relationships. Loud ambition can intimidate, threaten, or unsettle people around you. It can create tension before success even arrives. Moving quietly allows relationships to evolve naturally. You don't force others to confront your growth before it is real. When change becomes visible, it feels earned rather than aggressive. Silence allows you to operate without labels. Once people categorize you, they interact with the label instead of the person. Quiet movement delays categorization. You remain flexible, underestimated, and adaptable. Underestimation is an advantage. It lowers expectations and reduces scrutiny, giving you room to maneuver and improve without pressure. Power moves require clarity, and clarity is difficult to maintain in noise. When you talk too much, you absorb too many reactions. Silence keeps your internal compass steady. Decisions come from analysis rather than reaction. You respond to reality, not to commentary. This calm decisiveness is a hallmark of real influence. Quiet power also compounds. Small, unseen actions stack on top of each other without interruption. There is no need to pause and explain progress. There is no detour into storytelling. Work continues uninterrupted. Over time, this uninterrupted effort creates a gap between those who talk and those who move. When the move is finally revealed, it carries weight because it arrives fully formed. Full. There is no buildup of promises, no trail of explanations. There is only presence. People sense the difference immediately. Quiet power feels solid because it was built without performance. That stands on preparation rather than projection. Silence also keeps your identity stable. Loud moves tie your sense of self to external reaction. Quiet moves tie it to internal standards. You know who you are and what you're building, regardless of who is watching. This stability makes power sustainable. You are not shaken by praise or criticism because neither one is the source of your drive. Power that announces itself early often collapses under its own visibility. Power that grows quietly becomes inevitable. It does not ask for permission, attention, or belief. It arrives when it is ready, not when it is noticed. Never telling people what you do is not about secrecy for the sake of secrecy. It is about control, clarity, and self-respect. When you choose silence, you choose focus over noise, discipline over distraction, and progress over performance. You stop leaking energy into explanations and start investing it into execution. In that quiet space, ideas mature, skills sharpen, and strength compounds. By the time your work becomes visible, it no longer needs defense or validation. It stands on its own, solid and undeniable.